NG, which yes, he just waved his hand. Thank you for coming. Recon NG is cool, by the way. So if you see that guy, shake his hand. Putting fake comments in HTML can draw people off the track. A fake Google Dork result, you can get all kinds of good ones from the Google hacking database. So kind of leveraging the tools of the bad guys to help you out. So this is ideally what you want when villains start poking at your website. So I personally would not want to be that guy because he looks like he's about to crap his pants. So some more fakery here. Unused hidden fields in your ASPX pages won't interfere with the user experience. It won't tie up your programmer's time too much. Using a fave icon that doesn't match your platform. Number 3 is fairly obvious, but sometimes people forget it. Change your XPowered by HTTP response header. A useless but interesting HTTP response header in your web server, setting a cookie on the server side that's not used. Somebody's gonna look at that because it's like, oh, it's a cookie, you know, this thing, what is this? Using special characters in your form field names. I'm actually stealing this idea from a vendor, and I don't honestly know how well this works if you're using Visual Studio, but they did this and it caused me a pain in the neck to try to figure this out and actually make the tools that I was using work. So I thought that was kind of cool. And like the bullet point says there, you could even go one step further with an HTML encoded name and put an ampersand LT at the end or greater than, something like that. Fake generator meta tags. Nmap has a script that looks for those, so you could plant something like that in your HTML. Some more fakery. If you go through stored procedures and use them within your database, particularly SQL Server, the Microsoft stack is what I've worked with most of my career, so I fall back on that. But name the user admin, DB admin, something like that. If for whatever reason an attacker manages to get through and he can look at and see what your database user is doing, yes? Oh, okay. So if the attacker sees that, they're likely going to assume the existence of an overprivileged account, and they're at least going to waste time trying to escalate privileges to something that may not even escalate. So that's kind of sneaky. Actually fooled a vendor on that one. Using a non-standard character set with an HTTP request header of accept char set can help. By default, I don't think SQL Map accounts for that. You have to use a specific flag to tell SQL Map to look at something other than that's not a standard character set. Adding an unused query string parameter is a goodie. Started using that at work some, and that's caused some issues with some vendor testing that we've had done on some of our data and just throw it out there. Burp Suite uses the legal statute symbol, you know, that weird looking double S, overlapping double S, as a tag for insertable payload points, attack points. If you use those in hidden fields and stuff, that's going to give Burp Suite problems. So just little things like that when you do assessments. If you're a red team or a blue team or whatever, kind of keep an eye on and, you know, make some notes and stick those in your report. Hey, you know, for the client or your internal customer or whatever, try this. This might, you know, this might help raise your game. You know, defense in depth is just that. You build it in layers. I hate to reuse that old saw, but do it in layers. You know, a little bit here and there. It's not going to be a huge investment of time. It's not going to be a huge investment of effort, and you're not going to have to pay out a whole lot of cash to do it. It's something that your programmers and other staff can do. So like I said, I blew through that pretty fast, so there's plenty of time. Questions, comments, anyone? Yes? Yeah, that, and the question was, won't this make your pen testers find fewer vulnerabilities in the system? I actually had a conversation last night with a gentleman who brought that same question up, and yes, that is a good point. That can drag resources away from finding and resolving true problems with input validation or what have you, insufficient patching. So yeah, that is a good point. That's why I mentioned near the beginning, you want to get yourself in a reasonably good shape security-wise before you do this. Otherwise, you're kind of building on a rickety foundation. If your foundation isn't reasonably solid with, you know, good defensive practices, I don't feel this will be as helpful. It will be helpful, and then, like you said, it's gonna drag people off in wrong directions. But you know, once you're in decent shape security-wise and you start doing this, it's gonna make your defense better, I feel. But yes, that is a very good point. Yes.
So kind of playing on what he was saying, you did mention documenting that is really, really important.
Oh gosh, yes, it's crucial. Otherwise, you know, your internal staff's going to be lost.
So have you ever been in a situation where the pen tester asked for that documentation so that they could actually safely do it?
As of yet, no, because this is still pretty new at my workplace. But we have warned vendors who we've contracted with to test our stuff. Not everything you see is going to be, I guess, real, for lack of a better word. So, you know, yes, report it, yes, find it, but just be aware that this is what we do. So, you know, keep that in mind. Yeah, absolutely. And I guess it really depends on how you engage with your pen test firm. You know, do you want them to approach it in more of a black box scenario or a white box or a gray box? So I guess that'll depend from business to business. But yes, that's a good point. Other questions? Yes.
Where do you, in the development life cycle, where do you implement these changes? All the way down at the dev or up closer to prod?
Okay, the question was, where do we implement these active defense changes? Closer to when the code is being initially written or closer to production? Thus far, my best, I guess, results with it, we've played around with it in a variety of places. It seems to work best going closer to production, because that way the testers can, the internal QA people can see, okay, this is working. When this button is clicked, this event fires and it's doing it. We can verify that that's working. At that point, the programmers will go back and put the gotchas, so to speak.
Already integrated this kind of approach with a tool like App Sensor, because I'm wondering if you, depending on what kind of framework you have, if you inserted these canary or tripwire fields into your form dynamically, and had any changed or unexpected value in there be an alert event, you could It seems like you can catch bad guys really, really quickly that way. And then whatever response mechanism you have, invoke it then.
Yeah, absolutely. The question was, has this been integrated with anything like App Sensor or something like that? No, this was something that thus far we have done entirely manually, just as things were going to production, throw a hidden field in with the cookie value, and just kind of watch logs and see how many times that cookie may be active on. Yes, the fellow in the hat, I think I saw his hand first. Yeah.
So, I apologize, I missed the first part of your presentation on the properties that you use to track, but are you distinguishing between, page map content and like HTTP methods and verbs and protocols in terms of, what it says about the adversary if you see the state of those scripts?
I guess a bit. The question was, are you distinguishing between HTTP verbs versus web page content? Did I get that right?
Yeah,
okay.
And the reason why is that, I've had some pretty large sample data to measure. When you see scanners and automated tools tend to flip a lot of bits in the pages.
Oh, yeah, they're very noisy.
Like when you see methods change and things that impact state, that's usually a bad human actor. Because if the scanner does that, it blows up its automation anyway.
Yeah.
Have you experimented at all with that?
Not yet. Honestly, like I said, this is still pretty new for me and the programmers that I work with. So we're still trying to kind of feel our way around. But when I kind of conceived of this talk and I was running it by them, they thought, oh, this might be pretty cool. Just put that in at DerbyCon, see if it gets selected, and then honestly look for some feedback from the community, like the questions that you guys are asking. See what other ideas pop out, because everybody has got different experiences. Some people like are app strong, like myself, network strong, blue teamers, red teamers. It's all good information. Yes.
So do you put any canaries in the system so that when they're hit that you trigger IR events?
Yes, I had mentioned that earlier. Thus far, we've just kind of watermarked data in internal tables, so to speak, those that aren't connected to the web application, just to see if anything starts traversing the wire outside of various zones that we have internally. Thus far, thankfully, knock on wood, that hasn't happened. But we haven't yet set web application canaries, if that makes sense, other than what I've described about hidden tags and directory paths that point to items that really aren't used, just to see if people trip over them. Thus far, the stuff that we've seen in our logs has been, I guess, relatively benign, if you can use that phrase. Fairly obvious stuff that is untargeted, just somebody running a word list through Derb or something, even at a very slow rate to try to avoid detection. It's like, okay, well, this is kind of cheesy. They're looking for some PHP file when this is running on IIS and .NET. But a lot of these techniques we've only started to use just within the last few weeks, so it really hasn't been long enough for us to get a good sample data of what people are doing when they actually come across this stuff in the wild. You can't see what else the attacker's doing because you've just cut him off at the neck, so to speak. You could, if you could invest the time and the effort, you could stand up a more realistic looking honeypot and to try to seek out some of this stuff and see what the attackers really do with it. But like I said, my first instinct on what to do with this data and how to respond would be to just sinkhole the IP. Sadly, where I work is not a very big place, so we don't have the resources really to devote to that kind of work, but that's certainly a worthwhile pursuit. Yeah, the fellow there?
You seem to have a pretty good mapping of common tools with different techniques. Is that stuff that you researched on your own?
Yeah, I do web application testing internally. So this kind of came about when I was talking to some of our programmers, and quite by accident, really, when the guy said, "Oh, I forgot to take this hidden tag out." This was for testing when we turned this over to QA and you, the security guy, and then we had some back and forth, and it was like, this is kind of interesting. I didn't waste a lot of time with it, but it took my focus off this one input field that I was thinking about, because this hidden tag showed up, and it's like, okay, this might have something. You might be onto something here. This might be a good mistake, because it started to draw me kind of off the path. Not like there were bells going off saying, "Hey, look here," but something that's like, "Oh, this is kind of interesting." So then, putting myself in a more blue team frame of mind, it was like, what if I got more than these? What if I got one or two of these? Or what if I got this cookie here that the programmer left in for testing and forgot to take out? With enough of those, just thinking about it from purely from my perspective, that might divert me enough to where I would stop paying attention to the things that are really important. So, going back to the whole diversion, misdirection kind of thing. Yes?
Have you seen any performance ramifications in terms of general volumes of attacks that you're seeing one way or the other?
Not so far, no. We've been experimenting with this in kind of a small scale, so nothing, at least nothing that the network guys have told me about that's really dragging stuff down, or the user base. We haven't gotten any feedback saying, "Oh, the website's slower now that you did this update." But I guess that's kind of a balance that you have to strike, especially if you're a web server admin. You want to have enough of the active defense type stuff that will slow down.
The Census stuff from South Africa, and myself and a team of people, all independently, published a lot of research on doing this, on different ways you could detect bad humans versus scanners, ways you could put in active components and instrumenting web apps, even the honeypots. And so it was talked about for a couple of years, and then it most died on the vine. Shape Security implemented some of these techniques in a very rudimentary way.
Back in 04 and 05 was well before I got into security. I was still writing code then, so I'm going to have to go back and look at some of that stuff to.
We'll trade info, and I'll send you some of the latest.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that.
To be rebooted. It's been a long time. I haven't seen much discussion about these techniques, and they actually work pretty darn well. So.
Yeah, well, maybe it's something that you just need to dust it off a bit and update it for the time. Things come and go. Other questions, comments? No? Okay. Well, I appreciate you guys coming. I'll put the slides and other notes up there at that address on GitHub that you can see. My email's up there if you want to holler at me via email. And I'll be around the conference. Stop and chat. Thank you very much. Oh, thank you.
I went to see the R stats talk and they use it, but
Oh.
yeah, here.
Yeah.
What happened, I think, is that it was basically at the enterprise
Ago, and it was more focused on the system administration side, like using recursive directories to frustrate scanners, and it was phenomenal.
So the Census guys wrote a flash switch to automate a lot of this, and then use flash cookies. Because background people didn't understand flash cookies.
Oh, right.
So even adversaries we found weren't tracking work. And then as adversaries caught on to that, some friends of mine and I, we made a behavioral anomaly detection. It didn't scale very well. We wrote it in C#. It's probably still out there somewhere.
You know someone's really trying
What's that, Kevin?
I thought you.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I should. But yeah, we made a statistic.
Bruce Potter's talk kind of flipped on that, as well as John Strand's keynote.
John, I forgot the Sans person who wrote the yeah, no, it'd be great. I'd love to learn new techniques. Because I think that's really the way we need to get, right? Because like as a community, we're in a castle doctrine and it's not working. We need to reduce the asymmetry of attack. We need to make it more expensive for them to attack us.
Well, yeah, it's if you raise the bar high enough, then the villain, unless he's really interested, is just going to give up.
Right? And
He's going to go for lower
hanging
hanging
grill, right? If your neighbor's grill is unlocked and yours has a chain, they're going to go after the one that's been.
Yeah.
There's a global media company that was compromised 47 times in 1 year, about 4 years ago. You probably know who I'm talking about. And I worked on them when they attacked them for about 48 hours, and they just watched it die off.
Yeah, that's the one I connected to. Put them right here. Yeah, free candy.
So frustrating.
Meetings, iPhone Frank.
I guess they migrated to something else, but
Yes.
Part of the trick is to be boring. When I was with an organization that got targeted by Anonymous with the same thing, we had a huge spike on a week. Like they were on IRC, they were really excited, they were going off, it was Twitter. And then all we had was a firewall. We didn't have, all of our public resources were out on GoDaddy. And so like, we were boring. So they just stopped. That's all they were doing.
this customer had an inventory of about 1,700 apps.
Right. It was a completely different scale. And so you have to do something completely different.
So we just made it like video exploration and using the automation, because that's still looking for low hanging fruit and then you apply the chisel. So in that case, we did things it's usually an enterprise when you have this much bandwidth. But yeah, targeting is great. I use Sentry. Like I'm working on model stacks.
I know, right? And I'm like, well, and that's the thing. We're all sort of holistically learning. Like listening to your talk, I'm like, man, I'd love to sort of have a mapping of this technique frustrates this tool, like that legal symbol for burp suite. Like,
Yeah, I didn't go into that level of detail.
I don't see why people take it.
You know, like I said, I did this primarily to see
I shouldn't need any more.
does this make sense?
Has this been done before? Say,
How much is the lightage that you're introducing to your task, or how often
builds up in our system where they can make that.
say something internal to this?
Because that's their routine.
Well, yeah, that would.
The complexity between the specific shipping, butchers and all that, it's usually maintenance over time. You can see on the network side, just shift. I was using Sniffer
They
to
make
return to the
one
Century.
of the
It's
best
financial institutions like,
oh,
I thought I was actually talking to China. You know what I mean? It's the same thing when you guys later. And we're doing it now. We just have to distinguish some really stupid partners. So I have to make sure that I'm sure that it's not an adversary. It's hard to that.
well, yeah, but
It's still relevant on the web. Many years ago, I published it in adversaries. I were testing it right now. At the base level, yeah. The hallmark tends to be off. So it's automated tooling, looking at the pure automation in the script, but the general theme is they don't tend to register users, they don't customize apps. Their secondary automated opportunities. Hey Jeff, Tim Rice. So for a while, there was this targeting insiders for access. They wanted access to plugins. Did you sign up for browsers? So they would monitor like. Well, the sign up in the game. Sign up to the game. They register access. They don't have syncage. I think one of the guys in here would be a team. And then they wanted to do a CTF, right? So that's the team.
they start going through and they're creating user IDs for everybody. And they decided that was going to be Jar Jar Binks. Here's a copy release. And they were like, well, you know, Jar Jar online supposedly was like the ultimate Sith. I'm like, well, I guess I got that going for me. Alright?
Was it ultimate side? Oh, me.
Yeah. I want to guys are dicks. That's
Like in the case of Anonymous, it's almost always canon, seeking that monetization.
I don't think they're doing a lot of web reaches.
There's been a lot of talk of trying to do sharing, these information sharing platforms and intelligence sharing, and none of them have gained traction. None of them companies don't want to buy into this because they don't want to talk about their ideas, they don't want to talk about what happened. Well, the share price, for sure, and their lawyers, like I said, that's all anonymization tools for these report sharing.
I stopped mapping like 10 rooms ago. Are you serious?
They have the shit guy, right? So there's their shit guy. They had a system.
You got it, man.
Everybody to fund it. Home union people get that. You know, there's two. The world's at
Hey, man. Hey, I'm just going to tell you for the record, your picture right there, you look like a head of a biker group. We need to change that shit up, dude, because when I see that picture online, I'm like, that motherfucker looks like he's going to chop my head off. Just needs sleep. Now he's always like, yeah, that guy right there, he's a bitch.
That was taken at 614 con. That's actually
This is Trent.
Well, it's almost as if like, right, we do our threat modeling, so we know who our threat actors should be, so now we want to have those profiles and walk
Privilege goes well.
the threat actors that we expect to see. Here's the thing. I think
You know what?
yeah, you're right.
Really?
Not that I know. I mean,
I've got your demo slides that I did, but alright. You know, I saw you like that, you know that shit.
It would extract out the 442
Bring it.
petabytes.
For that, I hit link on the web server, let them try to extract it.
That was a
Probably is mine.
When you put it in my hand.
It's in front of me, I was drinking some of that. Can I see it? Seriously? Why you gonna be that way for?
Hey, good to see you, man. Hey, Matt, this is Trent. He works down in Cincinnati, too.
What is super security signal?
You never heard of it? You gotta touch.
I'm running this with anticipation, Daryl. I have a hug. You have a Daryl hug? I have a Daryl hug. Where do you guys meet? It's yeah. So you guys work for those? Yeah. The big call. I don't even know what the fuck that is.
You guys drinking beer while you do your talks and all that stuff?
Did you make one of those? No.
Gotcha.
Like, internet credit card, you send it.
Oh, yeah, 99.
I have an idea.
Let me see, I'll take up my time, 40 hours, 8 hours a day, that means it's this much money. I'm buying that motherfucker. So yeah, we're like, wait, it came in a box and I plugged it in and it just worked.
Comes from Shanghai Express, man.
Takes weeks.
Whoa. That's from China?
Everything's from China.
Actually, don't really look at so, because I looked at what Columbus was doing.
Is it ready to do this?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, no, I got way too many slides on the deck. I gotta trim them down.
So you're not listening?
I like putting a lot of messages because
last thing I need to do is
Well, and I'm trying not to do that. I got feedback from people at MyCap, they're like, dude, you got way too many slides. I'm like, I don't know how to fucking do this without slides.
for a single picture. Actually, did go through training with you. First time I did a slide deck, it had picture, like 5 bullet points. I was done, I did do training picture. You do that. But when you see the bullet points, go through your subject. But not always. It's very easy to get.
When you're in front of a room of 50 people or 100 people, everyone's staring at you, it's easy to have a brain fart. I literally I'm really drunk right now. I'm really drunk right now. I apologize. I'm sitting
You're drunk, get out of here. Get out of here.
Yeah, you also
I have water.
I can use some water. Oh, there's water there.
We have water. After I'm done speaking,
You want to hear a presentation?
you want to hear a really bad presentation, 6-foot cons, we did those shots, whatever the fuck it was, 15 minutes on the stage. He was hitting me, and I was like, oh, Daryl, I am. Yeah, okay.
I'll find you that. One year meeting or something like that. I had this positive care.
They usually make the announcements like 2 weeks ago.
Oh, yeah, I've been sorry. Fuck it, I'm like, I was going to wait.
I think someone buy you Saturday and they don't do that. Because somebody would take me up on that one. They're like, nope.
Crown diet.
I like that crown.
It's all about moderation. That way I wake up before you.
Wake up what?
I woke you up today so I could practice my presentation.
I had enough time to sleep in me.
It's like dinner, man.
What the fuck is he waking you? You're like, why are you
If I'm out, I'm
That ain't right, dude.
They're like, they hit something, yeah, that's stupid, but whatever.
I think we should totally accept that.
If you have an empty seat next to you, raise your hand.
Everybody raise their hand.
Raise your hand.
The floor is always free. My lap is open.
Oh, I think I'll give up my chair for this. I like to make it sound like it's
shouldn't be on there.
Thank you very much.
Just one.
Hey, Tim, you got an extra one for this guy down here?
Yeah, come down and give me a hug.
Well, you guys are
Seriously, be serious.
You know, it's not me, it's
Drink
Drink
on hugs.
Bring it.
Yeah.
Yes, I'm hugging right now. I got one right here. Oh, shit. I was
Coffee.
Make it good, make it good! Woo!
That's your shot.
That's That's love, man, that's love. Daryl, what kind of show are you running here?
Shit show.
Some crazy shit happening out here, Daryl. You better make your talks quick. It's
Getting hot in here, man. Everyone hold their breath for a minute.
See, dude, they give me that, give me this right there. So this was badge.
And you guys are early.
I was like,
So everyone having a good time?
yeah.
Drink too much last night?
Yes, I did. Absolutely.
Kind of a mixed crowd here. How many have a beer in your hand?
All right, right here.
No, you don't. Oh, okay, you qualify. You're the only one with a beer in your hand, man. Is this the Derby Con I grew up with? Gosh. So how many people here is first time at Derby Con? That's just freaking amazing, man.
Right on. Welcome.
Yeah. Thanks for coming. This is great.
Catch your shit.
How many people here have been to all of them? All right. That's good. So we'll give it a little bit longer since you're all early. I like to just sit there and stare at me.
It's the mustache.
Is that what it is? It's my wife. She's like, people are always staring at you. I'm like, I look like a freak. What the hell you expect?
Once you realize.
No, now if I had hair, I'd be a freak. I already warned her about that. As I told her, I wish I still had all my hair.
Me too, buddy.
She's like, why? And I said, I'd like grow a ponytail out of the back, down to my ass. Then I would look like a real true freak. So how's the con going for everyone?
Good. Outstanding. Thanks, Daryl.
See any great talks today?
Yeah.
I kind of missed the one I wanted to go to. I was on the line with a customer, but that's life. So when's your talk again?
Saturday at 5.
5.
Yeah, and I'm nervous. So
Are you? Good.
if you want to skip it, people can skip it.
No, I'm gonna show up drunk.
It's all good, man. If you don't want to show up. It's my first talk at Derby, and I'm nervous as shit.
I love Derby. This is great. This is a great place to talk. So, dang man, room's full. I guess we could start early.
Start early.
Anyone have a problem with that? Start getting hot. Starting to get hot. You guys have a problem with us starting? I mean, the room's packed. I mean, you know, they're all staring at me like there's something wrong with me. Okay.
Some of us know you do.
That's just good. I apologize for that if you know me. Or should I apologize to the ones that don't know me? That's probably the one. You guys knew better than to come.
True.
So let's go ahead and get started. I hate mics that aren't mobile, but we'll try to work with it.
You can carry it. Look at the wire.
I'm like,
It's better.
can't go very far.
No.
There we go. Okay. Well, we'll see. If I need to carry it, I like to be mobile. I like bouncing around and flailing my arms like a crazy man. See if that works. That's working good. So great. Thanks for everyone coming to my talk. IoT security, execute an effective security test process. A little bit about me. My name is Daryl Highland. I am the research lead for IoT technology at Rapid7. So what does that mean? You know, I wish it meant I got to play with IoT every day, all day, 5 days a week, but that's not the case. There's a lot of other things I have to do. But generally, the focus is around IoT, driving that knowledge factor within Rapid7 and helping our global service pen test teams develop methods, methodologies, and approaches around how do we approach IoT for our customers to properly secure the products when they come to us and point those issues out. So today's agenda, we're going to talk about, obviously, IoT ecosystem. Some of you have probably heard me mention this ecosystem, but we're going to go through it again. I think it's very important to get our mind around how we're going to approach IoT technology. We're going to talk about IoT testing methodologies. This is kind of like, you know, as we start working on IoT and testing IoT, it becomes real apparent, you know, these are the areas we typically want to look at, and this is how we want to generally look at those areas. And then also some IoT research results. So as we break down the different methodology structures, I'm going to throw different research I did in there, whether it's findings, vulnerabilities. We have a couple new vulnerabilities. I don't consider them like really great, but I think they're critical that actually were released. It should have been published like an hour or two ago, dealing with one of the products. And then we're going to talk about, some of the things I've done when I'm actually testing IoT, some of the things I learned in the process, and hopefully you guys will get some ideas out of it. Also, feel free to give me ideas, in some of these subject matters. So I'll be here until Sunday around noon. So please engage me. I love talking about this stuff, and I love learning new stuff. There's every time I open up a new piece of technology, I learn new stuff. I develop new methods, or I find someone else. If I have a piece of hardware and it's fairly secure, and the only way to really hack it is like cut the box open and pull the chips off, and there's no way to externally hack this device, which does happen, where are we left? We say, okay, your IoT is secure. No, it's not. When we turn around and look at the mobile apps or the cloud APIs and find out that these are riddled with vulnerabilities, now I can take a mobile app, connect to the cloud APIs, and control your hardware by violating all the security in these other pieces. So we need to look at that. And then also the network communication. This includes, standard Ethernet, Wi-Fi, but it also includes the other protocols, the RF protocols, and how they interact with the subcomponents in that ecosystem. So the ultimate goal when we approach IoT is that ecosystem of that product. All the pieces, parts, code, applications, servers that make that technology do what it's meant to do should be what we're looking at when we're testing IoT. Does that make sense to everyone? Hopefully it does. So what are we going to get out of that? Obviously, it's going to help us define the overall exposure footprint. By looking at all the pieces and how they interact, we can better threat model it for risk. Often we do that kind of threat modeling. When I put a system together and start looking at it, I stand back and go, okay, what kind of evil shit can I do to this? And I start modeling that out. How do I approach this? What do I want to do? So we build these threat models on how to approach testing or attacking the particular devices. And of course, we can determine the impact. What's the impact of the overall ecosystem if there's cloud issues, cloud API issues? What about if there's issues with the iOS or Android applications? So all those are actually considered. And again, looking at the whole ecosystem, we can better conduct a thorough security test or a more thorough security test. So coming out of that, what we want to do and what we've done is looked at IoT testing methodologies. Now, in generally, this is fairly high level because every granular level you get to is really on the particular device or ecosystem you're looking at. So it can vary. And it's typically made up of these 8 general categories: functional evaluation of the product, device reconnaissance. I mean, we often forget, what about recon work? What can we find out about the device? Cloud web APIs, mobile control applications, network communication, physical device inspection. Not physical device hacking, inspection. And then get into physical device attacks, firmware, JTAG, UART, all those type of things. And then of course, a lot of these devices utilize various radio RFs, whether it's Bluetooth, Zigbee, Z-Wave,